Welcome to the Flow Podcast, fearlessly leading our way. This podcast is a space dedicated to spotlighting the unfiltered voices of Black women in their unique leadership journeys. I am your host, Angela B. Harris. I'm an award-winning coach, speaker, author, and champion for Black women. Make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast to stay connected to our conversations. Let's get ready to flow. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Flow Podcast. I am your host, Angela B. Harris. If you're a regular listener, thank you for being on this journey with us. Your support means everything. And if you're new here, welcome to the Flow family. On this episode, I'm thrilled to sit down with Brittany Ward, the CEO and founder of BW Cultivates. Brittany is an inspiring leader who's doing incredible work to support Black women. Brittany's journey is both relatable and powerful, and I know you're going to love hearing from her. We dive into some deep and important topics like overcoming self-doubt, battling imposter syndrome, and what it really takes to break through the mental barriers that hold us back. Brittany also shares her personal story about the pressures of being a first-generation college graduate and how she learned to do the work to heal and grow both personally and professionally. One of my favorite parts of our conversation was Brittany's wisdom on why it's so important for us to challenge negative thinking and how we can choose to show up better for ourselves every day. Plus, you'll also hear her thoughts on psychological safety at work and the importance of rest in our community. So get ready for some real talk and some serious gems from Brittany. Welcome to the show, Brittany.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. I'm so excited to have you here. And first, let me just start by saying I admire your journey and all the work that you're doing to support Black women.
Thank you so much. It has certainly been a journey, but I wouldn't have it any other way, honestly. This is something that I'm passionate about. I am a Black woman, and so I want to see everybody else win. So I'm grateful for you considering me and thinking about me for this show.
Absolutely. And I know we share a few parallels in our story because we're both first generation college graduates, and sadly, we both lost our mothers at a young age as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, there is something to be said about how our life experiences shape us, you know what I mean? And so
Yes.
I know we definitely shared a lot of similarities in how we've moved and operated since then. So this is definitely close to my heart to be sitting down having this conversation with you today.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to dive in. Like you said, so many parallels, so many similarities. So let's get started. Can you just start by sharing a bit more about your early 20s and the challenges you face with self-doubt and insecurities?
Oh, that's a good one. My early 20s and the challenges I faced with self-doubt and insecurities. Um, for a long time, I did everything that everybody told me to do. Um, First generation college graduate, right? And so my grandmother, my family, those around me that raised me had very high hopes for me and very high expectations for me. And so even in my early 20s, I struggled. I struggled because there was so much pressure on me to do and be everything for everybody else. And I felt like I actually had to put a lot of my dreams on the back burner. And so some of the things that I struggled with were even things as simple as my college major, right? I double majored, and that was never my intent. I went down the path of psychology right out the door, and I loved it. But I backed away from it because I started thinking to myself, well, what if I can't provide for my family? What if
Mm,
I
wow.
don't make enough money to make sure that my grandmother never has to work again after she retires? Everybody's depending on me. What if I don't live up to their expectations? Right? I graduated in 2012. And so some of the things that also crossed my mind were, what if I graduate school and I can't find a job? Like these were all the things that I
Mhm.
struggled with. And I knew without a doubt that I had it in me. I knew that I was strong, capable, educated. I knew that I had been adequately equipped for everything that was meant for me. But in my head, I still struggled because of my background and my upbringing, having been, a victim of sexual abuse, having grown up in a household with domestic violence. No matter how much positivity was around me, there was nothing in here that made me believe that I was good enough for those things.
Wow. Wow.
I now see things very differently. I have had the opportunity to do the work, right? Because the work never stops. You're always working on yourself. You're always growing. You're always developing. And so, I had the opportunity to just take some time to self-assess and do some self-inquiry to figure out where I really wanted to grow and develop and incorporate that into the way that I live my life now and the way that I show up for others around me. But the journey was rough, rocky, bumpy. It was all the things in between.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. That definitely was a lot to endure. And what stood out to me, you said you took the initiative to do the work. And I know sometimes in our community, we tend to, brush things under the rug. Like, oh, I don't need any help. Nothing's wrong with me. Let me pray it away or whatever. So what motivated you to actually do the work?
First of all, you just you just open something up because this is a conversation that I have all the time in the context of just the mental health stigma and
Yes.
the thinking around what it means to actually get help. There's so much out there, especially within the Black community, that attributes getting help to being less than in some way, right?
Wait. Yeah.
And we know that's not true. We know that our mothers and our grandmothers and our great grandmothers pushed through things because they had to. We don't have to push through things anymore, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to what motivated me, I say this with all respect for my elders and those who came before me. As much as they did their very best with the circumstances they had and with the resources they were given, I knew I didn't want to live my life the way that they lived their lives.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother, God rest her soul, made $750 every 2 weeks at a job she worked at for 30 years and took care of 4 kids by herself on that, sometimes less than that because her pay went up over time. She, even up until her very last day, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. She
Mm-hmm.
never told any of us how bad the cancer was, and she just endured it by herself. And
Yeah.
so I remember just looking back, this was around the time I was about 25, going on 26, just looking back and thinking, I don't want to shoulder that burden that way. Like, God forbid anything were to happen to me. I don't want to hold all of that in because I could only imagine what it was like knowing that she was in her last days and having all these people around her that she spent more time worrying about than catering to her own needs, catering to what she needed in those moments. And so, while my family has taught me a lot of good and I love them, they've also shown me a lot of things that I want to try to do better as I grow and as I develop. So that was my motivation. My motivation was just being bigger, better, wiser. And I think I anchored on that because that was always what my grandmother told me she wanted for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
she raised me. So her thing was always, I want you to do better than me. I want you to exceed what I was capable of doing. I want you to rise above the expectations that everybody else sets for you. And while it also was the anchor in my motivation, it also, in some seasons of my life, caused me to spiral into imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's all these things that I think I have experienced that are probably not much different than anyone else's experience. And I know there are so many women that I've talked to that have gone through some things that look like what I've gone through. But I think what has been a deciding factor for me is choice, right? Because I
Yes.
said the work is the work. You're always going to be doing the work. It doesn't look the same in every season, but part of doing the work is choosing. It's choosing you want something different. It's choosing to look at yourself in the mirror and work on hard things. It's choosing to acknowledge that there are things about you that aren't healthy and you want to do them differently. And that's okay, right? The first step is acknowledgement. And so I made a choice that there were things that I wanted to be different. And if I wanted to show up as a better version of myself, then I had to choose to get help.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you say about, just wanting to be bigger, better, and wise, and also just kind of trying to like break some of the stigmas that we have within our community. Like you talked about, shouldering that weight. And oftentimes a lot of Black women or Black people, we view it as a badge of honor because we're
Yeah,
carrying this weight, but we're also carrying, like you said, generations of weight on our shoulders. And just because they did it, we don't have to do it. So I applaud you for recognizing the choice in that situation and taking that initiative. And the weight is not good because like it leads to stress, which can cause cancer and other chronic illnesses within our community. So we have to let that weight go and just look at it as a win that we're not failing, but we're winning.
absolutely. 100%. You're spot on. You see all the things in social media about having a soft life. I've seen things recently, Black Women's Day of Rest, right? And I think sometimes because of our generational trauma and the weight that we carry, and especially when we're not aware, we don't even think that we deserve those types of things.
Yeah, but there's a lot of guilt.
Yeah,
Especially
absolutely.
especially as it relates to rest. And I was like, I'm guilty of this as well. So I'm trying to be more mindful that, rest is restorative and that I am doing something if I'm resting. I should not feel guilty if I just want to sit on the couch for the weekend and watch TV, if I just want to go to the park and just like look at the birds. I'm restoring myself by
Absolutely.
doing that.
Absolutely. Girl, you are dropping gems for y'all on the line. You need to write down rest is restorative. Okay. That could not be more true. And that was something that I had to learn. Like when we
Mhm.
talk about, just my experiences and having the opportunity to become the woman that I am today, and even having the opportunity to work with other women, running yourself into the ground does not help anybody, right? My
Oh,
grandma used to say you
no,
can't pour from an empty cup.
absolutely.
And so I've talked to women that have said, I want to rest, but I feel like if I rest, I'm not being fair to my son or my daughter because I'm not giving them the time that I could be giving them, or I want to rest, but I feel like if I take 30 minutes to rest, I'm not showing up the way that I need to show up as a partner in my relationship, or I want to rest, but I'm out here grinding, trying to get this business up and running, and I feel like if I rest, I'm not working hard as those who are as hard as those running alongside me, right? And so usually what I will ask them is, okay, what happens to your body when you don't rest? And so they'll run through all the different things, right? I burn out.
Hmm.
I've gotten sick. I've had flare ups, end up in the hospital. I break down because I've given so much time to my children and left nothing for myself. And so now I'm feeling empty. And so then I'll say, so then what's the healthier alternative? And then they'll say, rest. Okay, so what are you going to do, right? Because I said earlier, everything is about choice, right? And so when you have been programmed a certain way, you have to do your best to override that programming. That's what choice is.
Yes.
Choice doesn't
Yeah.
mean you don't get it. Choice doesn't mean you don't get it wrong.
Hmm.
Choice doesn't mean you don't have days where you know you should rest and you don't. Choice is I do my best to conscientiously choose myself. And every time I make the decision and I choose myself, I'm getting better at it. And so I
Hmm.
chose myself today. Okay, maybe I didn't do it tomorrow, but I did it again the next day. Okay, great. I chose myself twice this week. Oh, I really wanted to go to the spa. I got some other things I got to do, but I'm going to move those around. I'm going to choose myself this time. Choice is intentional,
Yes.
right? And so, to the extent that we can show up for ourselves and be intentional for ourselves, we can show up better for those around us.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's also about giving ourselves grace too. Like you said, we might not get it right the first time, but it's, consistency and small changes over time.
Absolutely, 100%. That is what it comes down to, right? It comes down to continuously striving. And I used to hate those words at work because it was like, oh, you're always running towards something. You're always trying to get to the next thing. But I think it's okay to continuously strive to be a better version of yourself if you feel like you're getting the results that you want to see. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so,
Yeah. Just be better than you were yesterday.
absolutely, 100%.
Well, I heard you mention that you struggle with imposter syndrome, and I know a lot of Black women struggle with self-doubt. So, what words of advice do you have for those currently dealing with those challenges?
Mm, mm, mm. There's so much that I could say in that space that I'm sitting here and I'm reflecting because we often think that what we struggle with when it comes to imposter syndrome and self-doubt is just here. We think we're just battling this,
Mm,
but we're battling so much more than that. You talked about generational traumas, right? Generational experiences. Imposter syndrome is something that is compounded by everything you see around you. From the day you are born as a woman, society is telling you that you are second class,
hmm.
right? In some countries versus others, that is more of a reality than what we see here living in the United States. And so everything around you is telling you that you're not good enough. Everything around you is telling you, you don't have the skills. Everything around you is telling you you're not worthy of that. And so when it comes to my experience with imposter syndrome, I'm going to be honest with you, I've fought like hell to override it
Hmm.
as best I can. And so, for me, what has helped me is challenging my own thinking. And so when I talk about challenging my own thinking, things like, okay, this job opportunity is on the table, right? You have the skills to apply for the job, you're capable, but maybe they won't see you as capable, right? That those are the things that go through my head, or maybe that level is too high for you. I know I got it, but
Hmm.
these are the things that counter that. And so one of the things that I'll ask myself is, well, why do you believe that? What evidence do you have of that? What evidence do you have in your life that says that you aren't ready for that job, right? I go look back at my resume. Well, my resume has this, I got this experience and I got these skills. I don't really have any evidence that suggests that
Yeah.
I'm not capable of applying for that job. So why am I really questioning whether or not I'm capable of applying for that job? And so it's one of these things that my therapist taught me, which is just challenging everything, asking yourself, do you have evidence? Oh, you're incapable of showing up this way. Okay, what evidence do you have that suggests that that's the case? Challenging my thinking and challenging my mindset has been crucial in helping me overcome imposter syndrome. And it doesn't mean I don't still deal with it. I still have moments every single day where I am questioning whether or not I am good enough, questioning whether or not I am capable enough. But I think the key is to figure out and understand how to manage it. And so, small thing that you can do is just ask yourself, what evidence do you have?
Hmm.
Those thoughts start to creep in because most of imposter syndrome is dealing with negative thinking, right? And so when those thoughts start to creep in, ask yourself, what evidence do I have? If you need to get a piece of paper and start writing it down, what evidence do you have? And if you can't come up with evidence, chances are that negative thought is something that you are creating in your head and not a real thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like how like you said, you challenge yourself with the negative thoughts to kind of, reframe it. And I'm just thinking back to a situation recently. I was applying for like a RFP, and I was like looking at the requirements, and I'm like, not really sure. But then, I paused myself in that moment. You know what? You do have this, and here's how. Like the way it was worded, obviously I had it, but I had to reframe the way I was looking at it. And I feel like when you look at Black women in general, especially in corporate America, there's data that says we're the most educated demographic. So, we already have to overperform to get the job. So how are we imposters if we're already overeducated and underpaid and underleveled for the work that we are doing?
Absolutely, 100%, right? It's putting yourself in a position where you start to look at those things. I think the majority of small business owners right now are Black women,
Yeah.
right? And so when you start to look at those things around you, it really forces you to question yourself where the thought is coming from. You know what I mean? If you don't have any evidence to back it up, then you almost can't even hold on to it anymore because everything that you have written down or everything that you have started thinking about to combat that says the opposite. You know what I mean? And so it is not easy. It doesn't come overnight. Like it is something that I have had to work at and I continuously work at. But in terms of strategies for me personally, that's the easiest one is just asking myself, do I have evidence?
And I would just say, do it anyway. Even if you don't think you have all the qualifications, apply anyway, because there's data that says
Absolutely.
men will meet, what was it, like 60% of the
Absolutely.
requirements and
And
apply,
they'll
where women,
still
we have to
apply.
do like 90 to 100 before we even apply. But the man who isn't even qualified is going to apply and get the job. So do it anyway.
Absolutely. This is literally what I tell women. I say, men don't question
They
themselves
just show
the
up. And
way
like I said,
that we
they don't
do.
know, but they don't know, but they'll do it
They
anyway.
will do it anyway, and they'll get the job. And then they'll get in the
Absolutely.
role, have no idea what they're talking about, sit in
Right.
a room next to you, piggyback off of what you're saying, repeat it, and look like they know something.
And
And
I
so,
think that's probably where the imposter syndrome comes in, because it's like we're checking all the boxes, but then we're working for people that don't have the level of, or skills or qualifications that we do, and
yeah,
they're the ones demeaning us. So that's where
absolutely.
that self-doubt and the imposter syndrome probably comes from, not from our lack of ability, because of the lack of ability of the people that are managing us.
Absolutely. In some cases, I do believe that to be the case, right? When you look around you and you see people who are less experienced than you at higher levels than you, it almost makes you question, like, well, what am I doing wrong? You know what I
You
mean?
talking about my
How
whole
is it?
corporate career right there.
Yes, how is it that, Joe Schmo is
With
this
a high school
VP?
diploma. Let's talk about
Yes,
that. A high school diploma.
yes, is this VP, right?
Yes.
Who
Yeah,
is
you can't
making
even
this
get a manager
money?
job.
Yes, yes, is making this money. And I'm sitting here listening to him like, what are you even talking about? But you are hitting on why it's so important for us to override that and apply anyway.
Hmm.
Because if Joe Schmo can get the job with half, sometimes less than half of the experience that you have,
Hmm.
why are you any less capable?
Yes.
You know
Yes.
what I
Yes.
mean? And
Yes.
so, who girl, all the gems. This is a good conversation.
Right. And so as we were kind of like diving into that, it reminded me of something that I saw on Pinterest recently. So I had to pull it up. So I'm just going to read it really quickly. And it says, imposter syndrome is a myth, love. It's a myth that makes you believe you need to fix yourself in order to feel worthy. But you're not suffering from a syndrome, love. You're suffering from systems that were consciously created to make you feel unworthy. You
Yes.
are not what needs fixing. You never were. And I feel like that's the best description of imposter syndrome that I've ever heard.
Absolutely. I mean, that it alludes to where I was going to when I started talking about just the societal factors that have been built around us to keep
Hmm.
us down as women. And if you compound that Black women, right? Because when you
Right.
start looking at things like, oh, I go into all types of things when we start talking about, the Jim Crow era and how that has created institutional racism that we still deal with today. all of the systems around us have been built to put us in a position where we believe we're not good enough.
Yep.
And so, this is why I say you have to consistently challenge it, because when you are challenging, you're not just challenging this, you're challenging all the systems around you that are
Mm,
influencing this. And
mm-hmm.
so it is just such an intricately webbed problem, right? When you look at just all the things around us, even just the stuff that we're going through right now when it comes to the presidential election, right? Like, it is such an intricately webbed problem that you do have to conscientiously work hard to undo all of the stuff that comes up in here. Because one of the things that I tell women is it's not always yours to carry. And
That
so we
part.
walk around with these things that are coming
Mhm.
from our moms' moms, the institutions around
Yeah.
us, all of the things, and we fight them on a day to day. We struggle with them on a day to day. We work to get over them on a day to day, and they're not even ours to carry.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, girl, whew,
Oh, goodness. Mm.
mm, mm, mm.
Well, that's actually a good segment because I did want to touch on psychological safety. I know that's
Yes.
a big buzzword in the workplace. And for the listeners who are not familiar with the term, essentially, psychological safety refers to where individuals feel safe to express their thoughts
Mm,
without being punished in the workplace.
mm.
And I saw a report recently that says 66% of Black women report not feeling emotionally safe at work. Not, no surprise.
Yeah, not surprising at all.
So, Brittany, I want to hear your thoughts. Like, how does psychological safety correlate with self-doubt when it pertains to Black women?
I think it compounds it, right? And so I can only speak from my experience, right? So part of the reason why I have been able to be my best at work and I have been able to show up unapologetically is because I've had leaders around me who have enabled that in me, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of Black and brown female leaders who have pulled me up, who have corrected me, who have allowed me to feel safe showing up at work with different hairstyles on different days without being like, oh, your hair is different all the time. Like, it changed today. It's just like, oh, girl, your hair looks cute, right? I have been in rooms with women, and some of them not Black, have been in rooms with women who just allowed me to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because they simply allowed me to be whatever that needed to look like for me, whatever that needed to look like on that day in that season of my career, because I've had that, I have been unapologetic about showing up for myself, the types of roles I will take, how I navigate my career. But it took somebody showing me that I could do that in order for me to do that, right? And so
Yes.
when it comes to psychological safety, when you feel like your job is already hard enough to do, you're already carrying around these beliefs that come from these other places, and then you get into an environment that's not psychologically safe, it's reinforcing all the things that you may already be struggling with. And if you're not coming in the door with something, which is pretty much everybody coming in the door with something, right? Now you're in this position where you feel like your voice isn't heard. You feel like you don't have a seat at the table. You feel like you have to work twice as hard. And
Yes.
even then, when you work twice as hard, it's still not good enough.
Do
You're
we
in a
have to say
position
ouch
where,
real quick? Because like you're talking about my corporate career here.
girl, I'm telling you, but
Oh,
these are the things that I hear, right? Or you're being piled on. They're giving you more work than they're giving everybody else, and now you feel like you can't say this is too much, because if you say it's too much, they're going to look at you like, well, you should just be able to handle it, right? And so when you don't have a psychologically safe environment, You act based on what you're getting. You
Mm-hmm.
work the late hours, even though you are overwhelmed, overburdened, but because you don't want nobody else to think you can't do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Because then
make the decision
that'll show up in your review, not meeting
100%.
expectations, right?
100%, right? To your point, if I don't do it, is it going to end up showing up in my performance, right? You miss the family outings and the events that you want to go to because I don't want to be viewed as not being a team player when they have these after work events and when they have these happy hours and things like that. And so just like people naturally respond and react from a place of trauma, it's no different when it comes to having a psychologically safe environment or not having a psychologically safe environment, right? If you don't feel psychologically safe, I'm not going to talk to my manager. I'm not going to tell them what's going on with me because they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be able to
So they're
receive.
always looking for some way to kind of ding you. So again, like, why would you feel comfortable speaking up, asking for help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And so, for me, it all comes down to when you don't have a psychologically safe environment, that environment reinforces things that you may already believe and or feel, and it changes how you behave and react accordingly. Oh, I don't think I'll be able to have this opportunity because my manager won't allow me to go up for it, or my manager won't support me in it. Okay, so I'm not going to put myself in for it anyway. I know that thing that they're trying to do on that project is wrong, but nobody listens to me. So if I
Mm-hmm.
say it's wrong, they're just going to tune me out. I'm not going to tell them. It
Mm-hmm.
influences the way that you behave. And I think that is why people leaders, and I can say this because I am a people leader and I deal with this every day with my own teams. It is so important for us to get to know our people, to
Mm-hmm.
understand what makes them tick in a positive way, but also understand what makes them struggle in a negative way, right? Who you are at home is who you bring to work. And so if you are struggling in your marriage at home, it's going to impact how you show up at work. I can either be attuned to that and build a relationship with you so that when you're struggling, you're tell me and I can help you, respond and react accordingly when it comes to your work, or I can see you struggling and just pile more on you, right? Knowing your people is so important. And so, what I strive
Mm-hmm.
to do, I can tell you every single person on my team's name. I can tell you their husband's name, their wife's name, their kid's name.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you
Yeah.
what they do on the weekends. I can tell you when they're going on vacation. I can tell you the things that they struggle with on a day-to-day basis, things like perfectionism, things like people pleasing. Like we have these conversations and we talk about these things. And so I think just because of the fact that not having psychological safety compounds self-doubt and it compounds the way that people behave and react. It is your responsibility as a people leader to understand your team and to help them navigate through that because they can't leave that on the table when they come into the office just because they're in the office. It doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I'm just thinking back to what you said about, first of all, connecting one on one with the people on your team. When I look back at my career, I can probably name one manager, seriously, one manager. Remember the first day I joined her team, she said, I kind of know you from the interview process, but I want to get to know you on a personal level. And
Yeah.
she was like the only manager in my entire career that ever said that to me. And I feel like she was also the only manager that truly appreciated some of the external activities that I was involved in outside of work and actually recognize that
Mhm.
as leadership skills.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a sad reality that so many people managers don't have people management skills.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that stems from really just not having good people skills. If we want to be
But they
real.
still managed to get promoted, whereas we're just talking about
Yes.
imposters, we can't get promoted, but the people with the bad skills are the ones that get promoted.
And I've seen it. I have seen people with the worst engagement survey scores, worst leadership scores that keep getting promoted. And it's because it's not what they know, it's who they know. Right?
Yes,
And so,
yes.
it is girl, that can open up a door for a whole different thing around sponsorship and Black women that we're not even gonna go down
Lack
that
of
path.
sponsorship. We're over mentored and under sponsored. I just want to
Under
double something you
sponsored.
said. I had a conversation with a former VP of HR, and he was sharing a story with me about how he had a toxic employee on his team, and that he was getting, negative feedback about this employee. He addressed it with that employee. The behavior didn't change, and so he actually noted in the employee's review that this person should no longer be allowed to be a people leader. He
Mhm.
said at one point that person eventually made it to the short list to be CEO of the company. They didn't make the final cut, but they were on the short list to be CEO of the company. But this VP of HR essentially said that leadership will turn their eye because results trump toxicity. They will allow the toxic behavior to continue as long as that leader or that person is delivering results.
Listen, I will say this. I have seen it and I have heard it. I haven't had many of those experiences myself, because I've just been blessed to, again, be in spaces and places where I've had good leaders. I've had people advocate for me. But I think that in companies where the culture itself is toxic, you will
Mm-hmm.
see that and it will be a continuing cycle. And so, for me, what I tend to focus on with women is there comes a point again where you have to make a choice, right? I think that just due to our nature and who we are, we want to tough it out. We want to stick it out. We want to navigate it.
We got to
Why?
stop that. We have to change that
Why?
narrative.
We don't owe them nothing. If
No.
they had to let you go tomorrow, you
Yes.
would be
They would
on
not be, oh,
that
we gotta
list.
stick it out for Brittany. No, no, no. They would not think twice.
Absolutely right. They would make the decision that they needed to make for their company because that's business,
And we've seen that with
right?
the past 2 years with all the mass layoffs, specifically in the tech industry, where
Absolutely.
black and brown people have been impacted at higher rates.
Absolutely. 100%. And so I say this, they're making those decisions for their business. You have skills, you have experience, you have expertise. You are your business, right? What you bring to the table is your business. You're entering into a contract with that company, albeit, not a physical contract, but an
Mm-hmm.
intellectual contract, right? And
Yeah.
so just like they can easily make the decision to let you go, you need to be able to look at them the same way. This whole concept, I swear, this is one of the things I struggle with just because I was told very early on, like, don't get attached to any person, place, or thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
this concept of loyalty to a
I've never had
company,
that. I've never had that.
I'm
I
like,
have no
what's that?
problems moving on.
What's that? I don't know what that is because
Yeah.
I know that they're going to make the decisions that they need to make. And so I'm going to make the decisions that I need to make for me. And I feel like anybody who's listening, who is in this position, make the decision that you need to make for you. You are your business. At the
Yes.
end of the day, if you are not being treated the way you feel you need to be treated, move on. If you wouldn't stay with a man who was mistreating you, why would you stay at a company that was mistreating you? If you wouldn't stay in a friendship where there was no effort being given, why would you stay at a company that is not taking the initiative to develop you, to grow you, to promote you, to retain you,
Yep.
right? Move on.
Like that Fantasia song. Go ahead and free yourself.
That's a good song. I really do like that song. I didn't even, when you brought it up, I was like, ooh, that's a good one. That was a good one to throw in.
So, sorry. So when I was, I guess like when I realized it was time for me to, move on and exit corporate America, that's actually one of the songs I used to listen to. I had like this little 3-song playlist. It was Free Yourself. I want to say Let It Go. I think Keisha Cole, Let It Go.
Okay.
It's a Vivian Green song, Gotta Go, Gotta Leave. I've listened to those 3 songs like every morning. That was kind
That's
of like
what
my
gave you your
motivation.
motivation.
Yes, for it new. So I had to come up with a playlist.
Listen, y'all got the playlist. So when you need to get through your decisions, you need to run those 3 songs back. Let it help you.
So I want to talk, so keep it in line with that, moving on. So let's talk about the concept of starting before you're ready, because oftentimes we suffer with that perfectionism. We think we have to have all the boxes checked
Mhm.
before we move over, but what we don't realize is that perfectionism or that fear is like, it's holding us back, and it's, in some ways, it's paralyzing us. So how can folks explore that and really get to their true purpose?
Hmm. How can folks explore what's holding them back? So is the question, how can folks move beyond what is holding them back to get to their true purpose?
Well, I guess, how can folks become more comfortable starting before they're ready, instead of thinking like, okay, I gotta have like
Mhm.
all the qualifications for the job before I apply, or maybe I gotta, before I start the business, I need this certification or this training. I need this, I need that.
Ah,
You can
my
get, you can still get the 10 certifications and still not start the business.
well, my question would also be, what does it mean to be ready?
Yeah,
Right?
right, right.
And so when are you ever really ready? Right?
Exactly.
And so, for me, at some point, you just got to do it, right? And so there is no, I wish I could say that there was I wish I could say there was a framework. I wish I
Mm.
could say there was an approach. I wish I could say there was something special about starting before you're ready, but there isn't. There's one thing: belief in yourself.
Yes.
If you don't believe that you can figure it out, even if you don't have everything that you need to navigate it, you'll never do it. And so, again, I speak from my personal place of experience. I've never had a problem applying for roles that were more senior than where
Mhm.
I felt I should be or where somebody else felt I should be. But I've always believed I would figure it out.
I would say everything is figure it outable.
Yes, I've always believed I would figure it out because I am so confident in my skills and what I bring to the table. If you don't think I deserve, somebody else will think I deserve.
I'm the
If
same
you
way.
won't give
Yes.
me, somebody else will
I'm gonna
give
find
you.
that one person that's gonna give me that yes. Like, I don't care
Yes,
what you think, but there's somebody out there that's gonna say yes.
absolutely. And so, again, it goes back to what I said about treating yourself like a business, right? There's not one company in the world that anybody could work for that has the types of roles we want to see, right? There's so many different companies out there.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's only one me,
Mm.
right? And so at some point, you've got to believe in yourself.
Mhm.
And the what is blocking that is specific to each individual. So you
Mhm.
have to figure out what it is that's blocking that belief in yourself. And you've got to figure out how you navigate and move past that. You know what I mean? Because if you don't figure out what that thing is, it's not just the belief in yourself that's stopping you from going after it. You lack belief in yourself because of something else,
Right.
because
Yeah.
you went after it before and you didn't get it, or because that manager told you you would never amount to anything, or because when you were growing up, you were always picked last. There's always something behind the lack of belief. And so if you can figure that out and you can navigate that, you can work on changing that core belief about whether or not you're capable. And it'll change how you think about getting started, before you're ready. For
Mm.
me, I operate in the context that there's no such thing as ready. You're never ready for anything. You're never ready to graduate high school and go to college. You're
Mhm.
never ready to graduate college and go into the real world. You're never ready for having kids, no matter how much you prepare. There's a bunch of stuff you don't know. You have no idea what it's like to be married until you get married. You don't know what the role looks like. I don't care, no matter what they tell you on paper that role is going to be. You don't know what it's going to look like until you step into it. And they could have bold faced lied to you. And so, what do you have to lose?
Yeah. What do you have to lose? Like you said at the beginning, you just have to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you have to lose? If you're going to bet on anything, bet on yourself.
I say the same thing. I say the same thing. Wow. Well, Brittany, before we wrap up, I have one final question for you. I know we talked about rest at the beginning. So, what do you do to recharge when you aren't fearlessly leading?
Nothing. I know that sounds crazy, but literally, I do nothing. Like, I'll get on the couch, I'll put on mindless TV, I don't turn my phone off, I don't take
Mhm,
calls. I will um try to make sure that I put my laptop to the side, not opening that, not responding to emails. Like, rest is rest for a reason. And so for me
mm,
personally, rest looks different for different people.
mhm,
If I am laying on my couch with my computer, or if I'm laying on my couch with my phone, or if I'm laying on my couch doom scrolling through TikTok, that's not rest. And so for me, when I'm intentional about taking rest, I do nothing. I
mhm,
lay on the
mhm,
couch with my blanket, make sure I got my ceiling fan on, light some candles, maybe crack the window a little bit. I'll put on a movie and I'll just sit. Whatever it is that I need to do to feel like my body is recharging, I will
mhm,
do. Um,
mhm.
Now, as of late, there are some other things that I have been getting into, like breath work. I really
Uh-huh.
like that. That's really good for you to just release tension and trauma in your body. And I have a lot of tension in my body. You know, trauma lives in the nervous system. So even if you feel
Yes.
like you've worked on it, it's probably still there. Breath
Yes.
work for me has been phenomenal. Some folks do meditation. I'm not too heavy into that, but working out is another thing that sometimes I will do just to kind of rejuvenate. It's probably like, what do you mean working out? Like, you're working your body. Yeah, but I'm working off the stress. And
Mhm.
so,
You're releasing the tension that's in the body.
yes, anything that releases tension, relieves stress, that allows me to feel like I'm not anxious, I'm not running towards anything. I am grounded, centered, resourced in my window of tolerance.
Hmm.
That's what I want to do. And so for me, that's blanket in the couch most of the time.
Hmm. And I love how you said you are intentional about, turning off your cell phone or turning off your laptop, because even though we might be on the couch watching TV, if we're still scrolling our phone, we're still kind of stimulated by that.
100% hands down. You're absolutely stimulated by it. Like, I've had days where I've been on TikTok doom scrolling and not realizing how long I've been doom scrolling, like just,
Mhm.
laughing at videos or things that I find funny. And then I'm just all of a sudden tired because even though I'm not moving,
Yeah,
mentally
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
exhausted from
Yeah.
taking in all of this information. And so again, everybody's bodies respond differently. So you have to decide what it is that works for you. But for me, just having the opportunity to just be and just settle, like anything that feels like my body is settled is I'm like, okay, let's go at it. Let's do it. Like, so that's what I do to relax. Self-care and all that stuff works, but what I have found lately is even the things that I do for self-care take too much out of me to feel like I rest. So a good example of that is
Mm-hmm.
I love getting my nails and my feet done. In fact, I'm due for a nail appointment this week because these things they need to be done, but that's not relaxation for me anymore because you get in the chair and the nail tech wants to talk, or you're dealing with everybody chatting it up and talking around you. And so, like, I find that when I want to target true relaxation, being in a place that's quiet or that's tempered, being in a place that feels comfortable for me, whether that's on this couch or the one upstairs, being in a place where I don't feel like I have to react and respond to anything, that's what relaxation looks like for me.
Nice.
How about you? What does relaxation and rest look like for you?
It's a combination. So like you, I do like my get on the couch with the blanket, the mindless TV. But what I'm finding lately, actually a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to visit a wellness center in New
Mhm.
York. And going in, I kind of had like all these things in my mind that I was going to plan to do while I was there. But honestly, they have a very nice lake on the property. So I spent so much time just sitting in a chair, looking at the lake, looking at the trees, observing whatever was around me.
That
So really just
sounds
like I'm finding myself, I enjoy now just spending time in nature.
So I was gonna say that it's funny. I do hike. I don't do it as much out here because I live in Dallas, and so we're kind of flat. There's not a lot
Mm-hmm.
of elevation, but right outside the front of my house is a body of water. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so sometimes I'll just sit here and look out the window. I don't go sit outside too much right now because it's hot. Summers in Dallas are a little rough, but like being near bodies of water, being in the woods, like just being out in nature also settles me.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
yeah, I know that when it comes to the nature part, I need to intentionally do more because
Mm-hmm.
I miss it. I miss it so much. Like the last time I hiked was probably, I want to say maybe 6 months to a year after moving here, and I've been here 3 years.
Oh wow. Okay.
So you just gave me something to take away with me.
Yeah,
I need
challenge.
to go hike.
I'll be following up with you.
Yes, please do.
Well, Brittany, thank you so much for joining us today. How can our listeners get in touch with you and follow your work?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to stay in touch with me and all things that are going on, you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, at BW Cultivates. And if you want to just stay abreast of new programs, workshops, things that are going to be coming down the pipeline, you can check out the website, www.bwcultivates.com. Sign up for our email list and stay in touch with us so we can let you know what's coming down the pipeline.
That's great. And I'll make sure I include all that information in the show notes for our listeners.
Yes, please do.
And to our listeners today, thank you for tuning in to the Flow Podcast. As a reminder, new episodes are released bi-weekly on Wednesdays, and the podcast is available on all major podcast platforms. Until next time, take care. Thank you for listening to the Flow Podcast. As we wrap up today's episode, always remember your unique path, your voice, and your leadership matter. If you loved what you heard, subscribe now to stay updated on our latest episodes. Take a moment to leave a review and share this episode with someone who can benefit from these conversations. You can stay connected with me on Instagram at the Flow Podcast with Angela, or visit me on the web at angelavharris.com. Until next time, take care, stay inspired, and keep fearlessly leading in your own way.